Hey everyone, this is Jace bringing you another Ever Crisis video. Today I wanted to talk about the new Zack and Matt banner. For newer players, I actually think this is a very strong banner. Maybe not so much for veteran players, but for newer players, this is a great opportunity to pick up a lot of utility all at once. So first off, I want to talk about a couple of things to consider before we even get started. So if you're new to the game, one point that I want to drive home first is that when you're looking at a banner for Ever Crisis, if you don't want the gear or the costume that is featured on the banner, don't pull on the banner. You can always get the weapons later, unless it's a crossover banner. And we've only ever had one crossover banner in like the 104-ish days that the game's been running. So for the most part, if you see a banner and all you like are the weapons, you don't care for the costume, skip the banner, put the weapons on your wish list, and you can get them later. Second, don't pull on a banner unless you can guarantee that you're getting the costume that you want. If you have the absolute worst luck, getting only one stamp per 10 draw, then it's going to take you 36,000 blue crystals to guarantee that you're going to get a costume. You probably won't have to spend that many, but that's the absolute worst luck. A worse scenario is you go in with 20,000, crossing your fingers and hoping, and then you don't get the costume due to some bad luck. So always just make sure that you can guarantee the costume before you pull. It's just advice that I follow. One more thing. This banner lasts until the end of 2023. You can see just above the word stamp card right there. It ends December 31st, 9:59 a.m. So basically until the end of 2023. At the time of recording, it's December 17th at about 3:30 Eastern. So there's no rush. Even after you watch the video, if you're still not sure, just hold off until you're absolutely sure this is a banner that you want to pull on. There's no need to give in to FOMO. Alright. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I think this is a really good opportunity for new players. Zack is actually a fantastic offensive debuffer with access to magic defense down and physical defense down. And the new weapon that just came out on this banner expands his utility by making it possible for him to be a healer and a defensive debuffer, all while basically making sure that he can meet survivability requirements in the process because of the amount of HP that the costume and his new weapon provide. The reason this is so great is that when you have your utility bases covered, specifically being able to decrease enemy stats and raise your own stats, it opens up a lot of content that you wouldn't otherwise be able to do unless you have access to those buffs and debuffs. And Zack is very good on the debuff side, and to a very minor extent, the buff side. During this video, I'm also going to talk a little bit about Matt's weapon as well. But I'm going to spend most of the time talking about Zack, and after I've talked about both characters, I'm going to walk you through a wish list that covers the majority of the utility in the game that you'll need in order to open up future content for you. So first thing that I want to start off with is Zack's costume, or gear as the game calls it. So it provides boost HP and boost physical ability potency. I want to start off with the boost HP. Boost HP is so handy on an outfit. It just allows you to bring characters to the end game content much more easily because you don't have to worry quite as much about survival. I recently made a solo clear guide for the most recent Crash battle, and in that battle I was running Matt and Lucia. For Matt, I was running an outfit that had boost HP and physical attack, but I was using him as a healer. And the HP on that outfit allowed me to do so, because it meant I didn't have to focus quite as many sub-weapons on boosting his HP. Same thing with Lucia. The outfit that I used for her had boost HP and boost magic defense. Didn't help her deal more damage, and the magic defense doesn't really help in that fight, but the boost HP made it so that I could focus on other sub-weapons to boost her damage. So right off the bat, boost HP, I'm a huge fan of having that on a costume. The second ability, boost physical ability potency, that's considered one of the best R abilities in the game. Because often what happens is you'll build a character, like a physical damage dealer, and you'll stack physical attack. Eventually, you're going to hit the cap of physical attack that can actually benefit a character. Because once you have 55 points of boost physical attack, adding any more past that doesn't actually help your character at all. So a common strategy is after you've maxed out physical attack, you switch over to boost physical ability potency. And so for this to be on a costume is very handy. I think we've only had 2 other costumes so far that have had this R ability on them, and they were both from the Final Fantasy IX crossover event that ended a couple of weeks ago. So Cloud and Tifa have access to this R ability on their outfits, but now Zack is the third character to have access to this R ability on an outfit. And last thing about this outfit, it looks so damn good. It looks incredible. This is, it's so spiffy. I wish I could justify pulling for this outfit. The only reason I'm not pulling for it is because I have Zack's Halloween outfit, which is, it provides the same R abilities basically, except instead of boost physical ability potency, it's boost physical attack. So I personally can't justify pulling for this costume because I already have one that does such a similar thing for him. But if I didn't have the Halloween costume, I personally would be pulling for this costume. I absolutely think it's fantastic. Well done to Applebot on the stats and on the appearance. It's just fantastic. Okay, now moving on to Zack's weapon. So Zack's weapon, the Twinkling Star, I'll move it up to level 90 at OB0 or Overboost 0. For newer players, that means you haven't pulled any additional copies of it. It's just you have a 5-star, and that's what you have. That's OB0 or Overboost 0. At OB0, it deals some physical damage, physical non-elemental damage, but that's not the main point of the weapon. The two main points of the weapon are the magic attack decrease at mid-tier, so that means 2 levels of magic attack decrease, and the physical defense down at mid-tier. Again, 2 tiers or 2 levels of physical defense down. Now normally for the weapons that we've seen, for most of the weapons actually that we've seen up to this point, you typically only get one or the other. Either the weapon reduces magic attack or it reduces physical defense at 2 tiers. This provides a little bit of roll compression, so you're getting both magic attack down and physical defense down at mid-tier in one button, which is quite good. We've seen a couple of these before or actually I think we might have only seen one, and it was an FF9 crossover event weapon, Kuja's Spirit Blade. You might hear some other content creators talk about that, and it reduced physical attack and magical attack at the same time for all enemies on the field. It was quite strong. Unfortunately, you can't wishlist the crossover weapon, so if you didn't play during the crossover, you can't get it. But a weapon like this suggests that they might begin to make that the norm, having 2 different effects on the same weapon. Now, magic attack down and physical defense down, they won't always go together, which some people might see as a con of the weapon. I actually think that's completely fine, because what this does is it gives you access to both in one weapon, even if you don't need both. So if a fight only calls for magic attack down, Zack can fulfill that role now if he has this weapon. If the fight only calls for physical defense down, Zack can fulfill that role as well. It can only go up to mid-tier, so you can see that it says, so for example for the magic attack decrease part, it says magic attack is decreased, potency mid, range single enemy, duration 20 seconds, extended plus 6 seconds. That's what happens when if you use the ability on an enemy that already has the debuff, it just extends the debuff by 6 seconds. And then it says maximum potency mid. When you see that on a weapon, that means that the weapon is capable of increasing any already existing debuff to mid-tier. Normally on a weapon that only decreases magic attack, for example, or only decreases physical defense, if it's one of the gacha weapons that you pull with tickets or with blue or red crystals, then even at OB0, the max potency is high. So that's one drawback that you have with this weapon, is that it can't bring these 2 debuffs up to high level unless you bring it up to OB6. In order to do that, you have to pull the weapon, let's see, it's OB0, and then you have to pull it 6 more times, so 7 times. It's absolutely doable, not quickly, and not with a small number of blue crystals. Often what people will do is they'll pull this weapon over time. They'll put this weapon on the wish list, for example, and over time they'll just get additional copies until they reach Overboost 6. A lot of people think that this weapon's not going to be useful until Overboost 6. I have to respectfully disagree. Mid-tier debuffs are often enough for what you're trying to accomplish. So for example, if an enemy buffs their magic attack, being able to reduce that enemy's buff by 2 tiers at a time is still very, very useful. And even ending at 2 tiers of magic attack down can be just fine. If you really want 3 tiers, you can bring a second character who has one of those magic attack down only weapons, and Zack can hit the button, and then the next character can follow up and push that debuff potency to high tier. So there are ways to work around it, and that still saves some ATB on the second character to focus more on DPS, as opposed to that second character having to press their own button twice in a row. Zack can provide some support and some healing. I'll get into that a little bit later, because that's a possibility with this weapon, and that other character can instead spend only 4 ATB debuffing the enemy instead of 8. Now those other 4 ATB bars can go towards damage. It makes a difference. But anyway, if you want this weapon to be able to push its 2 debuffs to high potency on its own, you're going to have to pull a good number of them, which I would not rely on in the course of just one banner, but it's absolutely doable. So anyway, that's the ability. I think it's a fantastic ability. It allows Zack to become a defensive debuffer specifically for magic attack, while also providing a physical defense down debuff, which I think is fantastic. Now, onto the R abilities. You see that there's boost HP and there's boost physical ability potency. Again, these are both top tier R abilities. And if you use this in Zack's main hand, which I actually would recommend most of the time, I'll explain why in just a couple of moments here. This, along with his costume, which if you're pulling on this banner, you should make sure that you can get the costume. The costume coupled with this, here let me put it back down to OB0 since that's about the stats that you're most likely to see unless you are pulling a lot. With the costume and this weapon, there's a good chance that if you get it at maybe Overroost 1, for example, you don't need any sub-weapons that have boost HP on them. And you don't need to have his secondary with boost HP on it either. And that opens up the doors for a lot of things. If you decide you want to make him a stronger physical damage dealer, you can focus on physical attack, or weapons that have physical attack on them to put on his sub-weapons. Or if you want to make him a healer, which I think you might be able to do with this weapon, you can focus on weapons that have the healing stat on them. It allows you to be a little bit more flexible because you don't have to worry about giving HP sub-weapons to Zack, which also means that you can focus on giving HP sub-weapons to other characters on your team if you're running low on the number of HP sub-weapons. I think that's absolutely fantastic. If you still want to push his damage, you can give him physical attack sub-weapons, and it'll make him an okay damage dealer. I still wouldn't recommend that you make him your main damage dealer. There are going to be other characters who can fulfill that role more efficiently, but you can still boost his damage, especially with his outfit and this weapon both having boost physical ability potency. You're probably going to be up to level 3 of boost physical ability potency just by having this weapon in your main hand if you have it at level 80 or 90. Okay, so those are the R abilities. I think they're fantastic, and as you continue to build this weapon, these 2 R abilities are fantastic on any other damage dealer. So this weapon, as the game goes on, is just going to age like fine wine as a sub-weapon. I think that's really, really good. Now, taking a look at the support materia, we see 2 physical attack boosts and 1 all cure. So the physical attack boost, that's really, really good. And the reason is that if you have an elemental materia at 3-star or higher, specifically a physical elemental materia, since these are physical attack boost support materia slots, at 3 stars or higher and level 10, materia can either match or out damage an OB0 5-star elemental weapon. So what I mean by that is, let's just back out here for a quick moment and go on over to the wish list. For example, here's Lucia's Holiday Revolver. You see that it deals 440% magic earth damage. Once you take into account the ATB cost of this weapon's main ability, the Rock Blast, the ATB cost of materia, specifically elemental materia, and you multiply the potency of the materia by 1.2 and adjust for the fact that materia costs 3 ATB and this weapon costs, or this weapon's ability costs 4, the materia will actually either match the damage. In this case, I believe it'll match the damage at 440%. And in some cases, these types of weapons only have 400% potency. The 3-star materia can beat it. And that's a 3-star materia. It's not too difficult to get 4-star materia after you've been playing for even just a couple of weeks. So that means that this weapon on Zack, if I can go back to the weapon here, having those physical attack materia is really great. That's going to make him quite flexible in terms of fulfilling elemental weakness in different fights, when elemental weakness is something that you can take advantage of in a fight. As for the all cure spot here, I've seen content creators who have run other weapons that have come out recently with this materia slot, and you can straight up make a character remain healer. Now, the concern that I have with Zack in that regard is that this weapon doesn't have any boost healing R abilities. That being said, since you don't have to worry about boosting his HP, you can just load Zack up with sub-weapons that have healing, and my guess is that he would still make a pretty decent healer. And there's actually a specific Zack weapon that you can use in his secondary slot to give him strong single target heals, and I'll go over that because I'm going to talk about the wish list that you could go with for this weapon. Altogether, I know I've been talking about this weapon for a while, I'm just very excited about it. The way that I would imagine Zack's role with this weapon in the main hand is that you would set him up basically as an offensive and defensive buffer, since you have physical defense down and magic attack down, and potentially a healer because of this all cure support materia slot. That being said, you don't necessarily have to use that third materia slot for healing. You can just throw a Ruinra in there if you're trying to break a certain sigil, and then rely on the other two materia slots for different elemental weaknesses. Just because it's there doesn't mean you have to use it, but having it there is super, super nice. And because of Zack's outfit and the R abilities on this weapon, his damage is still going to be, I think, pretty decent, and like I said before, you don't have to worry about survivability. I would absolutely pair him with a physical DPS, and actually I would make an all physical DPS team with this weapon, since it's providing physical defense down. That way everybody on the team can take advantage of that physical defense down debuff, and you can maximize your damage. So anyway, that's Zack's weapon. Those are my thoughts on it. I think this is a fantastic weapon. I am so sad that I can't justify pulling on this banner just because of the outfit. I hope to eventually be able to wish list this weapon, and I think it provides a lot of coverage for new players. Alright, now moving on to Matt's weapon, the Bramble Spine. So Matt's weapon, the main ability, Stalwart Bravery, provides a physical attack increase at mid-tier, that's 2 levels, to a single ally for 30 seconds. When you reapply it, it extends the buff by 10 seconds and can increase the potency to high, so that's 3 tiers of physical attack up. In addition, a regen is applied, which I think a lot of people overlook that regen. I'm going to talk a little bit more about it in just a moment. And a very tiny single target heal is cast of 9% potency. That's quite small. I'll talk about the healing in just a moment. A lot of people who are talking about this weapon are mentioning that the only way for this to apply at mid potency, the physical attack increase, is to bring it to overboost 6, which is true. If you just want to get to high physical attack in one button, yeah, you would have to pull 7 copies of the weapon, which is a lot. It's quite hard. You're either going to have to open your wallet or you're going to have to be patient. I don't think you have to have it at high tier immediately. I've been able to clear plenty of content just relying on mid-tier debuffs and buffs. In fact, the crash clear video that I mentioned just a couple minutes ago, I relied on Sephiroth's Aonibi, which provides him with a magic attack up at mid-tier. I relied on that and was able to clear what's considered to be the hardest content in the game. The crash fights are some of the hardest content that's put out in the game. It worked just fine. So I don't think you always have to have high tier in order for this to be good. There are still some cons to the weapon. I'll be sure to cover those, but I don't necessarily think that that's one of them, especially because once you get this to overboost 1, unfortunately this isn't shown when you preview weapons. I really think that Amplibot should add it. This is information that I got from the unofficial Ever Crisis Discord, which I highly recommend you follow. At overboost 1, the physical attack buff is a little bit longer, which is nice, but at overboost 1, that's when you really start to see this weapon's healing abilities start to shine. So I mentioned that a lot of people overlook the regen. In overboost 0, you can see that the regen is only 9 seconds long. At overboost 1, weapons often get a pretty sizable upgrade, which is why I think it's weird that they don't show overboost 1 to us, but For example, offensive weapons get a potency increase, healing weapons get a potency increase, and this weapon is no exception. The regen goes from 9 seconds to 12 seconds, so that's an additional tick of the regen. From my understanding, again, this is information I pulled from that Discord that I mentioned, the regen, it ticks every 3 seconds, and the heal that it gives every 3 seconds is at 15% potency. So at overboost 0, you're basically getting, once you account for the regen and the tiny heal at the end, you're getting 54% potency at the cost of 4 ATB. So 13.5% potency per ATB. At overboost 1, with it being at 12 seconds, you're getting 71 potency for 4 ATB. So 17.75% potency per ATB bar. For reference, a 3-star Kira is 92% potency for 5 ATB, or 18.4% potency per ATB bar. And then for 4-star, it goes up to 19.2% potency per ATB bar. So what I'm trying to say is that with all those numbers, if you're kind of eyes glazed over there, this is almost as powerful as a single target Kira. And that's assuming that 9 seconds of regen only means 3 ticks of regen. I'm actually not sure. It might be 3, it might be 4. I'm not sure because the game doesn't do the best job of indicating that. So I'd have to look into it. Just to be safe, I'd rather err on the lower side and say that 9 seconds means 3 ticks. If you know, please correct me in the comments. If you're able to correct me, I'll go ahead and pin your comment if you're the first person to do it. I'm not trying to mislead anybody, so if anybody has additional information, feel free to let me know. I'd rather underestimate than overestimate. But that's still noteworthy because the heal is not the only thing that you're getting. You're also getting that buff. So it's really, really nice. The downside of this weapon is that compared to a debuff, which all the characters on your team can benefit from, you're only buffing one person, which is a little bit of a bummer. But the upside is that physical defense down debuffs and physical attack up buffs are not mutually exclusive. You can absolutely have both on the same team. Like, you don't want to underestimate how strong that combo is. If you're on a team with, a physical defense debuffer and you have Matt with this weapon, for example, and then you just have a really strong physical DPS character, and you're just constantly buffing them and the debuffer is constantly debuffing, you're going to put out some pretty respectable damage. It's a sight to behold. Another way that this weapon is nice is that with a weapon like this, your healer's main way of contributing damage can be buffing the damage of your other teammates. And that can absolutely add up if you're really, really pumping the damage for those two characters. And that also means that since your healer is not relying on dealing damage themselves, you can focus on sub-weapons that boost their HP for survivability and boost their healing to make sure that when they finally do need to heal with any other ability, or even with this ability, the heals that you're getting are nice, strong, beefy heals. So really, I think that's fantastic. Anyway, that was a lot of time spent talking about the command ability. Let's take a look at the weapon's R abilities. So boost heal, that's of course very good for a healer. I think that's pretty straightforward. And then boost magic defense. Not quite as good as boost HP in my personal opinion, but that's still boosting your survivability against probably half the damage in the game. I don't really know, what percent of the damage in the game is physical and magical, but you can rest assured that it's going to apply to a decent amount of damage sources in the game. So all in all, our abilities aren't too bad at all. Now for the support materia. These support materia are good for the exact same reasons that the support materia on Zack's weapon are good, because, they're exactly the same. But I want to focus just a little bit more time on the all cure support materia for this specific weapon, because it's a weapon that has a healing R ability. So for those who aren't familiar, Matt, who is one of my favorite characters in the game, if you see my channel, I use Matt all the time. He has a healing weapon called Prime Number, and it's one of the AoE healing weapons that people often recommend that you re-roll for. So there's Cloud's Crystal Sword, Aerith's Fairy Tail, Matt's Prime Number, and then to some extent Red 13's Platinum Collar, although people don't tend to like that one quite as much because it's a regen weapon. Crystal Sword for Cloud, very snappy animation. You hit the button, he heals. Fairy Tail for Aerith, you hit the button, she heals. Same with Red 13. Matt, you hit the button, he does a little twirl with his sword, waits a second, and then he heals. Doesn't sound like a big deal, but that's gotten me killed. It's gotten me killed a couple of times. Cure Materia, you hit the button and it goes off. And so that means that this weapon is a second healing weapon that Matt can use that allows for single target heals and AoE heals, and on top of that, the animation is going to be faster. The downside is that it's over time, with more overboosts of prime number, I would imagine that the healing from that is going to be stronger. That being said, as I mentioned before, I've seen a content creator running these kinds of healing weapons with the all cure slot, and if you're boosting that character's heal stat, the healing is very, very respectable, and they can absolutely solo heal for a team. So I imagine that won't be a problem, really for the most part, just throughout the game. I could be wrong, nobody knows the future, but if you're concerned about whether a character can solo heal with one of these materia slots, they absolutely can, and you don't have anything to worry about, in my opinion. So I've, again, been gushing about this weapon. There is a downside to it. The downside is that this right here, the base stats of the weapon. So this wasn't an issue for Zack's weapon. You can tell that for Zack's weapon, it's a physical attack weapon, and if I'm not mistaken, the stats on it lean physical. Yep, so as the weapon gets stronger, the physical attack stat on the weapon is what gets the most points. It's not the case for Matt's weapon, and they do this every once in a while. An example is Tifa's Tiger Fangs, which the stats lean physical, but it has a magic attack R ability. It's kind of maddening. But they made the base stats for this weapon lean towards magic attack instead of physical attack, when clearly, when you take a look at the support material and just the command ability of this weapon, it's meant to boost physical attack. So that's a downside of the weapon. Again, this is a weapon that's meant to have Matt set up as a healer. So the fact that the weapon doesn't lean towards physical attack, it's not the end of the world, but it is a downside that I still wanted to bring up. Overall, with this weapon, how would I use this weapon? I would use this weapon to set up Matt as a healer with offensive buffing capabilities, specifically for physical attack. And what I would do is I would put him on a team with all physical damage dealers. Sounds familiar, right? I just said that a couple minutes ago. So you could put Matt and Zack on the same team. Zack could focus on debuffing the enemy's physical defense, while Matt focuses on buffing your party's physical attack. Starting off with the main physical damage dealer, which should not be Zack, it should be someone else on the team. And then once you've buffed the main damage dealer's physical attack, you move on to buffing Zack. And then if the other two party members are buffed, then you go ahead and buff Matt. And you just kind of cycle all the way through. The regen will help, keep their HP nice and healthy. And if you end up with a need for burst healing, that's when you use a Cura in this all cure slot. So that's how I would run Matt if he's main-handing this weapon. Alright, so I've talked so much about how I love these two weapons. I talked about how I loved Zack's outfit, and if you recall, I've been talking for a long time, so just a quick reminder, the thing that I started this video off with was talking about how much utility you can pull out of this banner. And so what I would do if I were pulling on this banner is I would actually set up a wish list that's catered to, again, improving utility. And I think this is going to be particularly useful for newer players because, like I mentioned earlier, covering all of your utility bases will allow you to clear just a lot more content. And then in future banners, you can focus on building a strong physical DPS that would go along with this team. So if we were to take a look at the wish list, here's how I would personally set it up. So the first weapon that I would put in, and these are not in any particular order for the first four weapons that I'm going to describe. The first weapon that I would take a look at is Zack's Arc Sword. So the Arc Sword allows Zack to decrease the magic defense of an enemy by 2 tiers. And then if you use it again, at least when you have it at OB0, if you use it again, it'll bring it up to high tier. So this is one of those single effect weapons that I was mentioning earlier that can increase its debuff potency up to high tier. At Overboost 6, you start off with the debuff being at high tier right off the bat, so there's no need to use it twice. But again, when you're just starting out, the probability of you getting 6 copies of this extremely low, and so low that I wouldn't even bet on it unless you're somebody who's planning on really opening up their wallet. And I'm talking, it's going to be expensive to get it up to OB6. So I'd recommend patience even if you're somebody who likes spending money, but hey, you do you. I imagine that if you're watching this, you're an adult who can make your own decisions, so it's totally up to you. But this would expand the debuff profile of Zack, or the offensive debuffing profile of Zack, to cover the two primary offensive debuffs, which are physical defense down and magic defense down. The second weapon that I would pull for Zack, or put on the wish list for Zack, is actually his enhanced sword, which I didn't feel really had a use until this new weapon came out. And the reason I mention it is, first off, it's providing some additional boost to healing, which if you end up deciding to run Zack as a healer is just going to help him out. And also, with Zack's new weapon, the Twinkling Star, the support materia only allows for AoE heals. Now you could put another Kira materia in one of the other slots, just in one of the physical attack slots, because you don't necessarily have to use every single support materia exactly the way it was intended. And that would allow you to do some single target heals. But the reason I would recommend wishlisting this, if you're going to use Zack as a healer, is that this will provide, even at OB0, a stronger single target heal, all while providing the healing R ability and a little bit of damage from the boost ability potency. For newer players, boost ability potency is different from boost physical ability potency, which is different from boost magical ability potency. So this boost ability potency is going to boost the damage of both physical and magical abilities, but not quite as much as one of the dedicated boost physical ability or magical ability potency R abilities. So this is still going to give you a little bit of damage, but it's meant to be a healing weapon. And this is something that if I'm running Twinkling Star in my main hand for Zack, and I'm building him up as a healer, I would put this as my secondary weapon to make it easier to provide single target heals, because every once in a while a boss is going to use a single target attack, and you'll be wasting ATB using AoE heals that aren't benefiting the rest of the party and are only providing smaller heals to the one person who just needs one big heal. So this is a way to get that one big heal while also boosting Zack's healing stat to help him be a strong healer. For the third weapon on the wish list, what I would pick is Matt's Core Defender. So Core Defender provides an AoE magic defense increase at mid potency. So everybody in your team at the same time gets a magic defense increase of 2 levels mid tier. And if you cast it again, at least when you have it at OB0, it'll bring it up to high tier for 3 levels. This is another one of those weapons that once you have it at OB6, it just starts off at the high tier when you use it one time. But Zack is really good at covering the debuff bases for the most part. Not the best at covering the buff bases, not the best at covering the buffs. Matt does a really good job of buffing the whole party's magic defense, and since this is a banner that features a Matt weapon at a higher rate, this is also a good opportunity to pick up a couple of other utility weapons for Matt. So this is one really good one that actually I only got on my account a couple of weeks ago, and it's already started to come in handy. The last, or number 4, rather, weapon here that I would pick is Matt's Slick Beetle. So the Slick Beetle reduces the enemy's physical attack by mid-tier, going up to high when you use it a second time, and just like all the others, since it has just a single effect and it's a gotcha weapon, when you bring it up to OB6, it goes from reducing it by mid-tier to going straight to a high-tier physical attack reduction. So the only main debuff that Zack cannot provide is a physical attack decrease. Matt, however, has access to this weapon. So if you're building a team that covers all the utility bases, this is a great opportunity to just grab that utility for Matt as well. Having pretty much all of your bases covered by 2 characters allows you to really invest heavily in those 2 characters. So you level up those 2 characters, you focus on the stat stream for those 2 characters, you focus on getting other weapons for those 2 characters. It's a very efficient way to use your resources in a game like this that has limited resources unless you're willing to open up your wallet. So I'd recommend picking up that weapon as well if you're going to be building up Matt. And then for this last wishlist slot, this is a little bit of a wild card. I have a few recommendations. At the end of the day, of course, it's completely up to you. We're building a team that has all of its utility covered, but focuses on physical attack. So it's not a bad idea to focus on a weapon for a different character that you plan on using as a physical attacker. So for example, if you happened to pull on the Tifa Lucia banner that was up I can't remember when it went down. I think it might have been available for those of us who started on Steam, or for people who started on Steam. I didn't start on Steam. I've been playing since day one on the phone, but you know what I mean. And so if you pulled on that banner and pulled Tifa's outfit, this is a chance for you to wishlist Tifa's weapon, which is already available on the wishlist because these weapons come back later, and you can just pick up more copies of it. And so you can continue to overboost the weapon, get the physical attack higher, get the stats higher, and Matt and Zack could provide some really good support for Tifa, and Tifa can just blast. So that's one option. Another option is Tifa's motor drive, which provides a lot of boost physical attack. It has a strong wind ability, physical wind ability. We can focus on other characters as well. So there are some cloud weapons such as Maritime Sword or Murasame. Really what we're trying to focus on with this slot, or at least my current consideration for this slot, is just your main physical damage dealer. Because if you can have all the utility in the world, but if you can't actually deal the damage you need to deal to kill the boss, you're going to have a bad time. So this is a good opportunity to make sure you're also building up your main physical damage dealer, whoever it might be. It could be somebody that I didn't mention. It's totally up to you. Another option for this fifth slot on the wish list is to go for the last little, in my opinion, the last bit of utility that's not covered by Matt and Zack. And that is, I believe this is the weapon, an AoE physical defense up. The only way to get that at starting off at mid-tier right off the bat at OB0 is to pull for Barrett's Assault Gun. So this does the same thing as Matt's Core Defender, but just for physical defense instead of magic defense. So same deal, at OB0 starts off at mid-tier, if you cast it again it goes up to high tier, and then if you get it to OB6 it starts off at high tier. So that's another possibility. If you really like Zack and you want to stick with him, there are a couple of other options that you can use for this this fifth slot. So you can put in Zack's Black Whiskers weapon, which also provides a physical defense down, only mid, but it also has the unique utility of providing water resistance down, which works specifically on water-weak enemies to make them even weaker to water-based abilities. Right now, Zack is the only way, Zack's weapon, this one weapon right here, is the only way that you can reduce water resistance at the time of recording. So it's another, little niche bit of utility. But it's also a good pick if you're trying to boost Zack's physical attack, because it's a weapon that provides a very high physical attack R ability number. The issue is that it doesn't provide a very strong command ability in terms of dealing damage, but if you're relying on materia for your damage, like I mentioned earlier, specifically relying on elemental weakness, this provides a lot of physical attack that's just going to help you with that. It also opens up another, debuff avenue for Zack. Another potential Zack weapon is the Defender here. This one I don't feel too strongly about, but if you just really want Zack to have almost every utility base covered, the Defender weapon provides a physical defense up at mid-potency, but only to a single ally. It's to a single ally, but for a pretty long duration of 30 seconds. And if you cast it again on that ally, it can go all the way up to high potency. It also applies a regen, but it looks like I can't see the overboost one. I don't have information on that one, like I did for Matt's weapon, but it looks like the duration only goes up to 9 seconds, so it's not really going to be a strong heal. It provides you with a little bit of a healing R stat, but it's also, the R abilities, as you can see when you upgrade it, instead of leaning towards the boost heal stat, it leans towards the boost ice potency, which seems a little bit random to have on this weapon. But if you, for some reason, you just really want Zack to be able to handle every single damage type, and this is one way that you can do it. Not quite as good as Barrett's Assault Gun, in my opinion, because usually when you have an attack incoming, you're going to use the ability right before. You don't necessarily need the buff to last, 30 seconds. Just my thoughts. It's a potential avenue, and it's another way to boost his healing stat if you want to. Just wanted to bring it to your attention. And then the last thing that you can also do is, if you just really hate the fact that Zack's new weapon only goes up to mid-potency for the physical defense down, Zack actually has another physical defense down weapon in Cutlass. So this is, again, one of those single debuff weapons. When you cast it the first time at OB0, it's going to be mid-tier. You can cast it again to bring the debuff up to high tier, then at OB6, it starts off high tier. For the R abilities, boost physical defense, which again offers some survivability, but if you're going to use this next to Zack's new weapon, you're really committing to him not being the best damage dealer, which is okay. If he's going to be supporting, if he's going to be healing, for example, then this allows him to bring physical defense up all the way up to high tier, or physical defense down all the way up to high tier for 2 other party members that are really focused on dealing physical DPS. So that is one potential strategy that you can employ. It also has the boost physical, not boost physical, excuse me, boost ability potency. So that's the more general one that helps both physical and magical damage, but doesn't really help either of them a whole lot. So a little bit of a damage boost, and as you overboost it, it leans more and more into that boost ability potency compared to the physical defense. So that's one way that you can get Zack's physical defense down debuffs up to high tier, is you can go ahead and wishlist this weapon. But really for this last slot, the sky's the limit. It's up to you. You're going to know your account much better than I will, and so I'm sure you can pick the best option for you. Anyway, I know this has become a rather long video, but I just really wanted to talk about the possibilities with this banner. Again, for me personally, the only reason that I'm not pulling on this banner is that I already have a Halloween costume for Zack, which provides boost HP and boost physical attack, so I can't justify just the level of overlap between the 2 costumes in terms of their R abilities is leaving me unwilling to pull for it. But I really do think for newer players, this is a fantastic opportunity to pick up a lot of utility all at once that'll set you up going forward. And then in future banners, you can focus more on DPS. And really, with Zack's Arc Sword, you would be able to focus on physical DPS or magic DPS because Zack can handle debuffing for both of them. Anyway, I know it's been quite a while. Thank you for listening. If you found the video helpful, feel free to like and subscribe. It really goes a long way. I do plan to continue making guides, and if this video is received really well, then maybe I'll keep reviewing banners. This is the first banner review video I've ever made. It's quite lengthy, but I had a lot of thoughts on it, so hopefully it was helpful, and I will catch you next time. See ya!